But I want to ask Matt, though, about another issue, though, digital IDs, and that legislation has now cleared the Senate. Given everything that we know about the possibilities of these things to be misused, the way that things that start out as sort of convenience things and, oh, you won't have to show your paperwork for this or that, and everything we went through during the pandemic, the potential for this to really limit people's freedoms and to be tracked everywhere they go. We know with metadata, they started talking about, child exploitation material and stopping drug smugglers. And it actually, I think, even wound up being used by a local council to catch somebody recycling wrong. How do we know that this is not going to be misused? And why is the coalition seemingly going along with this imposition that could see every single transaction you make tracked or limited depending on what the policies or the panic of the day is?
Well, just to make sure we're right there, James, the coalition voted against the digital ID laws.
Good, well done.
Good,
excellent.
On Thursday, one of the few parties that did, along with One Nation and Ralph Babet of the Palmer Party. I think that were the only ones that were opposed. What was most shocking here is that the government rammed this through without any debate. There was zero debate on that bill. No second reading speeches, no ability to ask the minister questions as there normally would be through a legislative process, and no ability to discuss and debate the amendments, many amendments that were put to the bill. Now, I myself, I was on the committee that looked at this bill. I'd worked with Paul Fletcher, the Shadow Minister, to develop 4 amendments from the coalition that would at least help strengthen these laws, and one which would delay them, which I'll come back to. But there was no debate about that. So these laws, the government says they're voluntary, but there's actually very wide exceptions in place that allow companies to move away from the voluntary requirements and effectively make it mandatory for you to get a digital ID, potentially to open a bank account or interact with state government services. The government even refused to remove state governments from the ability to get exemptions. The coalition and I also wanted to see these changes held up until we see the related changes to the Privacy Act. We've obviously got this surveillance state coming through the widespread use of cameras and facial recognition, AI technology, and there is meant to be some changes to the Privacy Act to make sure your face and the data around that face is protected within the Act. It needs to be updated. And a lot of groups, civil liberty groups, some of which I normally wouldn't support, but did want to see those reforms done first before we allow private businesses to expand their use of digital IDs. And the government's refused to contemplate even those amendments. It's rushing ahead with these digital ID changes. And as you say, you've got to ask why. What's the mad rush here to allow private companies to surveil you more and potentially misuse your data to help grow their profits?